Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, bringing you a little chat about Frank Bridge tone poems. Now, Frank Bridge is a fascinating composer. He had a very, very interesting career. Let's talk about, first of all, let's just say when he was around, what his years were, 1879 to 1941. He underwent a tremendous stylistic evolution as a composer from a fairly uninteresting sort of late romantic, pale English, quasi-pastoral school kind of guy to a fully modernist, gnarly, advanced, but still, listenable. I mean, enjoyable he wasn't avant-garde in the wild, crazy, experimental sense. He was avant-garde in the sort of Bartók, Stravinsky kind of sense. But here's the thing. He was something of an outsider in English musical life, which sort of, is synonymous with saying he was open-minded, cosmopolitan, and competent. I mean, that's what they mean when they say he was an outsider in English musical life. He wasn't one of the old boys club. He's best known for being Benjamin Britten's teacher and principal inspiration, and a great one he was, because he opened Britain's mind to the world beyond England. And of course, the only thing that matters is the world beyond England. Nothing in England matters, right? I know the English people will get hepped up, but the truth of the matter is that English musical culture at the turn of the 20th century had some great voices, including Elgar and Vaughan Williams and Holst. I mean, there was the English 20th century school of composition is fabulous, and Bridge is a part of it, but there was a segment of it, the more outward-looking segment, that couldn't stand being in Britain, and that includes William Walton and Frederick Delius, and to a certain extent, Frank Bridge, who, though he didn't decamp and move elsewhere, as Walton and Delius did, he musically, stylistically, absorbed a much, much, much wider range of reference than some of his colleagues. And as a result of that, his music has never been very popular because you can't pigeonhole him. If you like the early stuff, you tend not to like the late stuff. If you like the late stuff, you don't want to hear the early stuff. The entire range of what he did is tremendous, but there are only a couple representative works in each period. Now, there was a lot more than we thought there was, because Chandos, and here they are, Chandos did a complete orchestral work series which took up 6 discs. And it turns out that, like any other composer, Frank Bridge wrote a lot of stuff. Some of it he sort of disowned, some of it's kind of junk, and some of it's wonderful. So we're only going to deal with the 3 major tone poems, the sort of canonic 3 tone poems at this point, the last of which was written just before his great stylistic leap into the musically unknown, the difficult last works. And those 3 tone poems are The Sea, as in, yes, The Sea, Summer, and Enter Spring. All 3 of them are fantastic works, wonderful, wonderful pieces. They've been recorded a few times. There are no really bad recordings of any of them because people don't do Frank Bridge unless they know how to do Frank Bridge. You know what I mean? You have to be committed to the cause. So that's not really an issue. But I've had the opportunity to play a couple of them. I mean, I did The Sea in my community orchestra. It was really fun. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, incredibly effective. It's got great tunes. Everybody loves it. It really is a good piece. They say it's, as fine as Debussy's La Mer, which was only written about 4 or 5 years earlier. But, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, the Debussy is the iconic sea piece. The Bridge is not. I mean, that's the bottom line. But that doesn't mean it's not an extremely fine piece of music in its own right. And it's quite sea-like. You get the sense of the water wafting around. In fact, here is the ending of The Sea, which gives you a sense of sort of the romantic sort of gush and it's wonderful. Here, let's just listen to this. Nice, huh? I mean, you do that at a concert, everyone's going to applaud. It's terrific. It's got 4 movements. It's almost a symphony. It really is just a lovely piece. Then there is Summer. Now, Summer is fairly brief. It's like 8 or 9 minutes long, and it's a wonderful evocation of the atmosphere on a hot summer day, the stillness, punctuated by, outbursts of stuff. It's far more abstract than the sea, and also beginning to be a little bit more harmonically adventurous. I want to play you just a little bit of the sort of central heat, fuzzy moment, meditative moments in Summer, because they're quite special. Here, listen to this. So you can see, I think, that stylistically, he's starting to become a little bit less, late romantic, sort of traditional in his thinking. Even from that brief passage, you can tell it has a different sound and harmonic basis. And then finally we come to Enter Spring, which is really wholly abstract, and it does exactly what it says. It portrays the march of spring, which is a fairly evocative concept. And this is a 20-minute, it's arguably Bridges' orchestral masterpiece. It's an absolutely wonderful work in every respect. And I'm going to play you a bit of the spring march bit, because you can hear now he's becoming far more personal and distinctive in his orchestral coloration, his handling of instruments, and in his melodic fabric of the work. And he's just on the edge of his leap into his more difficult, chromatic, gnarly last period. So here's the march from Enter Spring. Now, I mean, it's a great piece. And as I said, there really are no bad performances of any of this music. The only question is, from a recording point of view, what's the best deal? Because I want you to have a recording where you get all 3 of these pieces on one disc. I don't think it makes any sense to spread everything out. Now, the late works, there are 2 great orchestral works of his late period. One is the piano concerto Phantasm, and the other is the cello concerto called Oration. And I quite strongly recommend those as well, once you've sort of digested these. I mean, if you like sort of Bartok-y chromaticism, then jump into those. It's not a problem. You may have no problem with them, but I'm operating on the basis that it's sort of more interesting as a listener to follow Bridges' own progression. And you can do that to a certain extent on one single disc. So although the Chandos box of 6 discs has wonderful stuff, unless you're a diehard Bridgeite, I don't recommend it. I mean, the performances are fine, but there's just a lot of stuff in there you're probably not going to want to listen to unless you're really, really dedicated. On the other hand, it does have those late works, which are certainly worth hearing. So that's something worth considering. But let's talk about just 3 other recordings. There haven't been so many of these pieces. There are singleton pieces of some of these works but I'm not doing those. I'm dealing with discs that give you all 3 or 2 out of 3 at least. For example, Neville Marriner. I just did the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields box. He did Summer and Enter Spring, and he did them very well with the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. He really did. They're beautiful performances, but he never did the C, which is really a shame. If only he'd done the C, then we would really be somewhere. But this is Neville Marriner in the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, and if you have those 2 pieces, you may find the C somewhere else and be perfectly happy. It's up to you. The classic, iconic recording of all 3 works was always Sir Charles Groves with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. Now, Charles Groves was an absolutely fabulous conductor. He really was. Never got the acclaim that he deserved. Also had a huge catholicity of repertoire, but he recorded for EMI and kind of filled in the gaps that all the other people weren't doing, all those niche English composers, and he did them superbly well. His Frank Bridge disc is wonderful. Right now, it's probably most easily available in the huge EMI Sir Charles Groves box, which is like lots and lots of stuff, which I really think everyone should have. It's a fantastic disc of mostly English music. His Delius was great. I mean, he was just an incredibly musical, human being who did tremendous stuff. And the best Elgar March of the Mughal Emperors from the Crown of India suite, which, as we know, is Elgar's greatest piece. But his Frank Bridge disc is marvelous. You get the C, you get Summer, you get Enter Spring, and you get 2 short works, Cherry Ripe and the Lament. However, if you enjoyed those musical samples, then you already know where we're going because they are available on, here it comes. Are you ready? If I can get this damn booklet out of the box. Yes! Naxos! Here you go. James Judd with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. You get the C, you get Enter Spring, you get Summer, and you also get the quite excellent 2 poems for orchestra. Again, 2 shorter works that are quite lovely. And, smaller, less significant pieces, but still worth hearing. This Naxos disc is the disc to own when you're starting your Frank Bridge collection, especially if you don't want a huge box of Groves or can't find the single disc. It's a modern digital recording. The New Zealand Symphony actually plays a little bit better than the Royal Liverpool does in some respects. I mean, it's one of those, 6 in one, a half dozen in the other. It's not something we need to make a big deal out of. But I mean, it's at a great price. The sound is terrific. The performances are terrific. Judd is a wonderful conductor who also, has spent a lot of time doing less usual repertoire, and he doesn't get a lot of attention, and he deserves it. I mean, he did a fabulous. Remember, I talked about his Bernstein Jeremiah Symphony, which is every bit as good as Bernstein's. He's a terrific conductor, and this bridge disc, this one right here, is the one to get started building your Frank Bridge collection. And if you stop there, that's okay. One of the things that the record industry has been doing in its desperation to find new repertoire is insist on completion and complete cycles and complete works and complete this and complete that. The universe didn't begin that way. The universe of classical music used to begin with the premise that classics were rare. You know what I mean? That composers wrote a few sort of supreme masterpieces and a lot of good stuff and maybe some bad stuff, right? Well, you don't have to get everything the guy wrote. If you're interested in him and you want to continue, by all means continue. But it's perfectly fine just to say, I want to have a nice representative collection of the best British music from the first half of the 20th century. And in order to do that, you must have these 3 bridge tone poems, and you can get them all on one disc, and it's not expensive, and it sounds great, and you can stick them in your shelf and pull them out whenever you feel like it, and be perfectly happy with that for the rest of your existence on this mortal orb. Got it? So if you're going to go for Frank Bridge, get Judd, the New Zealand Symphony on Naxos. You heard the samples. You know they're great. And keep on listening. Thank you. Take care.